in the first one, because there is risk here. The third one is growth-aimed participation flexible pension fund. Here there are around 25,000 participants. The volume is 4.5 million. What about the distribution? Domestic shares 33%. In the second one, it was 95%, because I said it is risky. 95% in the second fund. This is 34% domestic shares. Government interest-free instruments around 50%. And here you see there is no government sukuk. And participation account around 17%. Now I covered also equity market instruments. Now I come to money market instruments in Turkey. In Turkey, before there was revenue indexed bonds issued by the Turkish Treasury. Recently, the regulatory framework for sukuk is prepared and prescribed. In Turkey, we call it rent certificate. Rent certificate is sukuk ijara. Issuance of interest-free securities. Revenue indexed bonds by Undersecretariat of Treasury. This is the old one. And the new one, rent certificate as asset-backed sukuk ijara. This is private, by a private participation bank. And rent certificate as asset-backed sukuk ijara by Treasury. That means, for the time being, in Turkey, there are two groups of sukuk ijara. One group is issued by the Treasury. Second group is issued by the private sector. The legal framework is a communique promulgated by Turkish Capital Markets Board, that is called İcara Certificate and Asset Lease Companies. This is promulgated in 2010. This is for especially the private companies, because it is Capital Market Board regulation. And there is another legal framework, which is the finance bill amending various tax bills. This includes the law side of the Treasury sukuk. And number 3, changes in law regarding public finance and debt management, again supporting Treasury to issue sukuk. And there is another communique, principles for trading lease certificates on Istanbul Stock Exchange. The purpose of communique by Capital Market Board is to regulate the principles regarding the board registration, issuance and sale of İcara certificates, and the establishment and activities of asset lease companies. The finance bill brings tax neutrality measures for sukuk el-İcara, thus paving the way for corporate sukuk issuances in Turkey. Now, also a big Turkish construction company launching sukuk ijara. as a private corporate sukuk. Includes a number of amendments in income tax law, corporate tax law, VAT law, stamp duty law, charges law to eliminate the tax obstacles in front of the sukuk issues in Turkey. You know, for sukuk issuance, the tax regulation is very important. New regulation makes possible to take over the public real estates and other types of public assets through sale or other types of transfer to an asset lease company, a special purpose vehicle. The article authorizes the minister to set up such asset lease companies. The minister may also authorize other public institutions to set up such companies. Based on this authority, the first asset lease company is set up in August 2012 by Turkish Treasury with the name of Treasury Asset Leasing Company. This is a special purpose entity, but 100% government owned. The communique allows lease certificates, including lease certificates issued by the Treasury Asset Leasing Company, to be traded in the Istanbul Stock Exchange. Most of you know the mechanism of sukuk. This chart shows the mechanism of sukuk or rent certificate issued by Turkish Treasury. There is Under-Secretariat of Treasury, and under it there is special purpose vehicle, which is TALC, Treasury Asset Leasing Company, TALC. TALC is the one under the Treasury, and in the right-hand side there are investors. Now I will briefly explain the mechanism. The public real estate is transferred to the Treasury Asset Leasing Company and registered to deed in the name of the TALC by sales. Since the beneficiary institutions, this is a government institute, continue to utilize the assets that are taken over by TALC, a lease agreement, which is sell and leaseback, apart from the deal of takeover through sale, is signed between the Treasury and the Treasury Asset Leasing Company. That means a government office which is using a government or treasury building sells it to TALC, which is also owned by the government, and sells and leases it back, becomes tenant in the building instead of being owner. In the beginning, it was the owner of the building, later becomes tenant of the building. The Treasury signs a letter of commitment to repurchase these real estate at the end of lease period. On the other hand, before the issue, Turkish Asset Leasing Company, Treasury Asset Leasing Company gives out a declaration to address the preservation of the aforementioned mentioned before assets on its own name and for the account of and benefit of certificate holders. In turn for the leasing of the assets purchased by the Treasury Asset Lease Company to the Treasury, lease certificates, which are sukuk, are issued that provide investors to merit rental proceeds from the assets on a pro rata basis. The payments by the investors in return for the lease certificates are transferred to Treasury Asset Lease Company. Proceeds from the issuance of lease certificates are transferred to the Treasury from the Treasury Asset Lease Company in return for the asset takeover. In context of the lease agreement and the repurchase undertaken by the Treasury, rental payments are fulfilled by the Treasury to the TALC during the life of the lease contract, and a payment is made in return for the repurchase of real estate by Treasury at the end of lease agreement. Proceeds from the rental payment and principal repayment at the end of the period are allocated to the certificate holders on a pro rata basis by the Treasury Asset Leasing Company. This is the legal framework which I tried to explain. What is the implementation? The outstanding amount of revenue index bonds, this is the old one, issued by Undersecretariat of Treasury is 960 million Turkish lira, which is no more issued. It was issued in the past. The outstanding amount of rent certificates, which is sukuk ijara, asset-backed sukuk ijara, issued by a private company, Kuwait Türk Participation Bank, is 450 million US dollar. And Treasury made two issues of rent certificate. Number one, denominated in US dollar at September 2012 in the amount of $1.5 billion, and another one denominated in Turkish lira, 1.6 billion Turkish lira. Treasury Asset Lease Company will publish the daily prices of rent certificates at official Gazette as benchmark price. Credit rates of rent certificates are given by Moody's and S&P, which BA1 Moody's, BB S&P. These are same rate as Turkish Eurobonds. And we come to the role of central bank. Open market operations, depending on interest-based treasury bonds, cannot be used by participation banks. Also, I have referred to this while I was